when you go out into the real world and you got a for a cybersecurity job, you're either going to be on the offensive side, a red team where you're going to be, your job is to attack sites, or the majority of you are going to be on the defensive side, and you're going to be using the same tools that you're using now in this class.
Welcome and thank you for listening. I'm Becky Freeman, and this is Next Gen Cyber, the future of cybersecurity, a podcast of the U.S. Cyber Range where we explore cutting edge trends, emerging technologies, and really the future of cybersecurity careers, featuring thought leaders as well as researchers and educators across the field. Today, we're joined by Randy Marchany, Virginia Tech's Information Technology Security Officer with 5 decades of experience in the computer industry, numerous awards, and 3 cybersecurity patents. Randy brings unparalleled insights into how hands-on education transforms students into cybersecurity professionals. And with that, Randy, welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is a real opportunity. I've been enjoying all the talks and all the things, seeing where the industry's gone in the last 30 or 40 years.
Oh, and that has been quite a difference, I am sure, 30 years ago, heck, even 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Randy, I would love if you would just take a quick moment to introduce yourself to the listeners. And we were just talking earlier about your connection to the Cyber Range from day one. I think that's so interesting.
Yeah. So as Becky mentioned, I'm the University IT Security Officer for Virginia Tech. My office is responsible for running all of the cyber defense for the university, both in the main campus here in Blacksburg and the Northern Virginia campuses. So we're basically the computer incident response team. If there's a cyber attack, my office and my teams, we're the ones that are the point for responding to those attacks, containing it, finding out what left, if anything, and basically doing as much triage as we can with the departments that get hit with it. My involvement in cybersecurity is that's a story and a half there. But as Becky mentioned, I've been in the IT world for this August will be 50 years. And so I've seen the transition of computers from big giant mainframes in their own separate buildings to microcomputers and phone-sized devices these days that hold infinitely more power than those big mainframes did back then. I got involved in the cybersecurity side of the house in 1991. I was a Unix system administrator, and at that time on campus there were only a few Unix systems here in 3 departments, and the 6 of us, there were 6 of us that were maintaining those servers, and one of them machines got hit by a hacker, and he spread out to the machines that I managed, and basically it took us about almost 3 months to clean up the mess. And being true sysadmins, where we like to automate as much as possible and we're lazy as anything, right? We said, hey, let's figure out how they got in. So that we don't have to go through this 2-3 month, cleanup cycle. At the time, though, anything about computer security had to do with cryptography. There was nothing about hacker attacks or anything like that. There were bulletin boards that we started finding, and that. And then out of the blue, I got an email from this startup company called the SANS Institute, and they were holding a conference in the DC area, and they were having these talks by speakers, and the speakers were the authors of the few books that we could find that weren't dealing with crypto. And so I said, hey, this is perfect. I grew up in the DC area, I can stay with friends up there and all that. I went to my boss. He said, we don't have the money to send you. And I was like, damn, I want to, we want to go. And I was ready to talk about ready to pay for it on my own, and then they sent a follow-up email that said, "Hey, we're looking for speakers, and if your proposal gets accepted, we'll waive the registration fee." Well, that was sounded great, and Ron Jarrell, who was the sysadmin with me, we said, well, this sounds like a good opportunity, but the problem was that we don't know anything about cybersecurity. That's why we want to go to these things. And then Ron said, well, we could talk about what happened to us. And this is where sometimes, to be clueless is an asset, because at that time, we did not realize, or we didn't know, that companies didn't like to talk about how they got hit by hackers, because they were afraid, well, if I do that, they're just going to come back, when actually the opposite would happen. So we submitted a proposal. It got accepted. We went, did the talk, and Alan Powler, who is the founder of SANS, came up to us and said, hey, would you like to work with us on some projects? And we said, sure, why not? The end result is that SANS developed a whole bunch of courses on cybersecurity. I was fortunate enough to help develop some of those early courses for them. And then SANS created a research group called the Center for Internet Security. And we wrote a bunch of standards for that. And that's how I got involved on the education side of the house. In the late 90s, the 97, 98, the electrical and computer engineering department here, the ECE department, they wanted to create a hands-on cybersecurity course. And the department head had gone to all of their faculty and said, who can teach this? And nobody knew anything about it. So, but Dr. Joe Trant, who was my advisor when I was in grad school, said, well, Randy's been working on these training things. Why don't you talk to him? And so after talking to my boss and working it all out, I created the first cybersecurity course for the electrical engineering department. It was a graduate course. It was hands-on. And then from that, it morphed into what we now have, is the first of a series of courses on cybersecurity that the university's done. So today I'm teaching ECE 4560, which is Computer and Network Security Fundamentals. And we average somewhere between 80 and 100 students every semester for that class, which brings me to the range. So we use the range. We use the range a lot for the hands-on exercises. It's an environment that contributors have submitted, labs and course modules and all that type of stuff, which has really reduced the amount of time it takes to do course prep and lab prep. The virtual environment lets us, run it from anywhere. In the past, I was having students download a VM image to their computers, and it just takes a long time to download on the line speeds, back then that we were talking about. As Becky mentioned, I've been involved with the range from the very beginning. As Secretary of Technology at the time. So Governor Terry McAuliffe was the governor of Virginia in that time frame. And Karen Jackson was the Secretary of Technology. And she was here on a campus visit and had asked what were people doing on the cybersecurity side of the house. And she came over here to our office, and I showed her some of the stuff that we were doing. And then a month or two later, she came back and said, hey, can you guys, create a budget for a range? Dave Raymond was working for me at the time here in the IT security office. And so he and I, we sat down, and Dave took the lead on that. And from that, we got the funding to do it. I still remember, this is something about Dave that I just really appreciate. We got the funding, the money showed up in July, and the Secretary of Technology goes, the governor's going to be at a cybersecurity, a cyber physical conference in Newport News in September. And it'd be really nice if you had a demo for him. And Dave and I, we had contacts with the Michigan Cyber Range, which at that time it was their range was all on-prem. They had banks of servers, and they had all this stuff. And we knew the CTO for them. He was a graduate of our lab here at Virginia Tech. And so Joe Adams, he, we were looking at that. And then when we got hit with this demo in September, in 2 months, that's when Dave said, we have to go to the cloud. And that was really the stroke of genius that he had that really, did it. And so he worked with the guys at Amazon, and that's how the range got started.
I love that story. Talk about too the educational component of it when you're talking about kind of the how it fills the gap and why it's so important to fill the gap between that theoretical knowledge and now you actually have this practical application with the cyber range and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, my involvement with the SANS Institute, and the SANS has done lots of hands-on training and all this type of stuff, so there was a critical need to train IT professionals at that time, who are already like I was a system administrator, and I needed to learn those skills, and then translating it down to the college and community college level. Well, community college people, and even here it was well, I'm not putting hacker tools on my network, that can cause all sorts of bad things to happen. And so it turned out that even though IT people wanted that training, they didn't want it on their network. And so the range, and like I said, Michigan was the first one, and then Virginia was really the second one, and going to the cloud was really the way to do it, because then you don't have to download. Like I mentioned earlier, I used to have my grad students and my undergrad students download a VM image, and that could take a while because home internet in the 90s and late 90s and early 2000s wasn't exactly high speed. But also the fact that nothing is on your local network. Everything is virtual. You got it all there. It's all cloud based. All you need is a browser. So from a student standpoint, it's pretty straightforward. From an instructor standpoint, like I said, I have lecture notes and all that type of stuff, but I wanted to do hands-on stuff, and I know from firsthand experience that it's a real pain and very time consuming to create these lab exercises where the students can do hands-on stuff. You got to make sure it works,
Right.
so you got to do all this testing ahead of time, and oh yeah, well, no, it didn't work this time, and so having that course repository, that's what really, from my standpoint as an educator, that's the thing that's so wonderful about it is it's if I want to do an entire course, I could go and download an entire course. If I want to do just a module on, say, network, security, or a certain tool, I could get a module on that. Or if I wanted to do just a lab exercise, I can download those things and it's all ready to go. The environments are there, and so from my standpoint, it really works. I've done some talks with high school teachers and things like that as part of our let's get the word out on the range, and they love it. They've taken off and with it.
You talked a little bit about the hurdles and the struggles of, hey, we don't, kind of a NIMBY, not my backyard. Yeah, we want the training, but we don't want this on our network. So once you
Right.
got over that hurdle, by providing this ed tech platform, by providing the US Cyber Range, still the Virginia Cyber Range, but now is expanded,
Right.
into
Right.
the US Cyber Range because so many more people outside of the Commonwealth want access to this. What have you seen when it comes to the struggles that students maybe once had prior to the access to the ed tech that they don't now that they're on the cyber range? Like what solution has it brought to the classroom?
Oh, well, I mean, sheer numbers. I mean, and if you're looking at it, like I said, my class is they had to split it into two sections because I was getting close to 100 students a semester to attend the class, and so that's 100 VM images that we had to create for people, and the students had to download, and then if one student has a problem with this and another student has a problem with that, we ran into some issues where students off campus. I still remember this. So it was an exercise that I built. This is before the range, and we have some machines here in our lab. And I gave the students an assignment. I said, okay, you have to do a vulnerability scan and you have to do a mapping of some of the machines here in our lab. Well, some off-campus students came back and they said, is the machine up because we can't get to it? And I check it, and I go, yeah, it's up. What's going on? And so we tried and we couldn't figure out what was happening. And then I'd see them in class, and we tried here on our network, and it worked. Turned out that their ISP was interpreting their scans against our machines as an attack. And so they were blocking. It was their ISP was blocking their ability to connect to my machines. So, whoops,
Sorry.
Sorry, my bad. No. They're okay to do that. So that's one of the big advantages of the range is that they don't get involved in that manner. Like your own ISP won't work against you, and say, hey, it looks like you're attacking this site at Virginia Tech.
Right, absolutely. So talk about too the US Cyber Range model and how it facilitates that collaboration between, I would say, like higher ed institutions and even governments, different state governments that maybe might see each other as competitors on who gets to the next thing first and who gets the latest and the greatest. And to really say, we get competition, but the US Cyber Range model exists and it facilitates collaboration.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I think that one of the biggest advantages of the range is all the course material and the lab material, it comes from individuals. It's not like, oh, you're not an employee of the US Cyber Range or the Virginia Cyber Range. These are educators. These are instructors at all levels, at the K through 12 level, community college level, at the higher ed level. These are all instructors that are teaching classes, and they are providing, with some financial support from the range, they're saying, okay, I created this module and here you guys can use it under, a GPL type license, So the course repository, and it's been growing. I mean, when we started with this and we went in 2016, I guess it was, we had a few courses here and a few courses there. Now, I mean, it's I don't know, close to 200 or so different things. The last time I looked, in fact, a couple of about 2 weeks ago, I was prepping for a hands-on lab for the class that I did last week, and I was just looking for stuff, and there were 5 exercises that I was thinking of doing, all laid out, that all I had to do was download them. But it's that incentive that you as an instructor, and you don't have to be a teacher. You could just be somebody who likes to develop these types of things, and you can get you can get some money for developing this stuff and making it available to the range. And it's the people that are creating these courses, like I said, they're coming from all over the place. So it's not just a single corporate, narrow view of right. Let's sell our product. It's our product is education, and people can help out with that. From a technical standpoint, again, teaching these classes, now I'm thinking about it. It's been 25, 26 years that I've been teaching this cybersecurity class. There's a reason why my hair is white, right? But one of the big things is that industry wanted people who had hands-on experience, and in those early days, you were kind of in that death spiral where you had to work to get the experience, but but you couldn't get hired because you didn't have the experience. And even now, it's so funny to see these job applications for entry level, cybersecurity experience, and they want 3 to 5 years of that experience, for an entry level job. Come on. So the range really fills that gap. And the big advantage of the Virginia range was because since it was funded by the state, and Governor McAuliffe at that time, what his vision was, but it was funded by the state. So really it's no cost. I mean, it doesn't cost an educator in Virginia for the Virginia Cyber Range, doesn't cost them anything. They go to the site, they set up a user ID, and they can download what they want. And that, I mean, nobody comes up with money for cybersecurity until there's an attack.
Right.
I always say never waste a breach, but that's but having this ability to make it available for the instructors and things like that, the cyber camp stuff that Gen Cyber camps that the range sponsors in the summertime, you see the teachers that come and attend those that week-long series of meetings, and it's a week-long of bam 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 type things. It's amazing just to see that, and everybody's so jazzed up about it. And in parallel, so one of the other projects that I worked on was this it's called the US Cyber Challenge. And what that is they have these competitions, capture the flag competitions, and they invite the top scorers of those competitions to attend a week-long camp. I've designed the curriculum for that camp and line up the instructors. But we're starting to now. We're This is the 10th year, or sorry, this is time flies. This is the 15th year we're doing it, but now we're looking at using the range for some of these types of things in a non-commercial way, I guess. But the U.S. Cyber Range, I think, like you mentioned, it is one of the reasons. It's a clear example of how popular and how needed this type of support is.
One of the really cool partnerships I thought was really cool that the US Cyber Range brought on was with the state of Maryland so that they could take what we were doing with the Virginia Cyber Range, take that business model for the now US Cyber Range and do it at the highest levels of the state government. So then to your point, the payment is done and it's just provided for all of these educators, K through 12, higher ed, community college, four-year universities. And it's really taking off there. And sometimes I think, you might come across a state or another commonwealth who might say, well, we want to keep the money here in our state. We don't want to give it to, say, the US Cyber Range of Virginia Tech. And I'll be honest, sometimes I hear that, I think that sounds silly because you could then use that money to elevate it,
Yeah.
don't duplicate the financials. I don't know that's all the thoughts in my mind. What are your thoughts on that when you hear
Well,
that?
yeah, I know a couple of states, they said, well, we're gonna build our own range, and then they find
Yeah.
out how complicated it is, and then they come back and go, can we
Maybe.
do that? Can we do that? I mean, that was really one of the reasons why the U.S. Cyber Range was created, was because Dave and the crew there and myself and a couple other people, we really showed it. We really talked about the range, and other people in other states, well, can I get in on that? Well, Virginia was tied to Virginia residents, right?
Right.
And then but then the demand came out, and that helped. That was great justification for the U.S. version. But like you said, allowing Maryland and that type of model, when they realize, ooh, we got to spend X million of dollars to build our own version of this, when we can sign up for the U.S. Cyber Range and take advantage of that, and like you said, use that money that we would have spent on this infrastructure to elevate our own people, state government, and things like that.
How do you get corporations involved too? I think right now with the cyber range, we're so, the team is so focused on, hey, educator, this is going to help elevate your students. And sometimes I think, hey, we should continue that conversation, but we should have conversations with industry and the Microsofts, and they don't have to be the Microsofts of the world. They can be the smaller industries.
Yeah,
Cybersecurity,
yeah, yeah.
impacts everyone and say, hey, you've got this hiring gap. We've got a solution. How do we partner to get this into more hands?
Yeah, I mean, even just a simple thing is, can we build training programs for your employees?
Yeah.
And they can come and use the range, whether it's the Virginia one or the U.S. one.
Mhm.
Can we provide that type of training opportunities for your guys? And oh, by the way, if any of your employees want to participate in the range, either submitting labs or course modules, whatever, it's open for them.
Yeah.
But then in that way, not only do you get your own staff trained to a certain level, but now that if you have students, whatever college, whatever community college, or whatever high school they went to, if they say that they were, they took classes in the cyber ranges, either the Virginia one or the U.S. one, they have an idea. Oh, okay, those guys know what they're talking about. So I think approaching it from start off by saying this is a training opportunity for your employees.
Right. And I wonder too if they could even sponsor classes or make donations to, I don't know what it would be. I feel like there's such a group of people, corporate industry, various verticals that could so benefit. They definitely benefit from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
workforce. So how do we get them in to get like, hey, company X, I don't know what it is. You University of Texas, because you're right next to them in Austin, and
Right.
this pipeline going. I just feel like there's so many infinite possibilities. It excites me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and the big thing that everybody in the industry wants, we want people with hands-on
Yeah.
experience. Don't and I said, well, our students in this world, they're using the exact same tools. Like in the class I'm teaching this semester, they're seniors. They're going to be graduating, either this semester or next semester. And I said, look, when you go out into the real world and you got for a cybersecurity job, you're either going to be on the offensive side, a red team where you're going to be, your job is to attack sites, or the majority of you are going to be on the defensive side because that's why people want to hire you. And you're going to be using the same tools that you're using now in this class. So, so you get some hands-on experience ahead of time. The people that are going to hire you, they don't have to train you on how to use the tool because that's time that they can train you, they can start training you on how they do business, not how to use the tool. So hands-on always will works well.
So I could talk all day long, Randy. I know we need to land the plane. I would
Yeah.
love to wrap it up with just your thoughts looking ahead. The past informs the future. The trend line is steep in the computer space in general, cybersecurity specifically, AI now coming on board. From the experiences you had, if you looked into your crystal ball, so to speak, looking ahead, where do you see cybersecurity education heading in the next decade? And in parallel, what industry is going to need to be looking for when they're hiring for those skills?
Well, I think I think AI is going to be a big factor in where we go with cybersecurity, and mostly because of doing the analytics piece of it. We collect tons of data. I mean, tons and tons of data that for humans to analyze and sift through and look for patterns, it's impossible. There's just too much of it. When imagine you're on a beach and you've got all the grains of sand, right? So people have been writing all sorts of analysis programs to break it down and look at all this data and filter stuff out, and that's evolved into AI stuff, which so I'd say the good side of AI is in helping analyze those patterns and look for those type of things. But as with anything with cybersecurity, there's always a dark side to it. Nation states will want to weaponize it and all that, and that's going to happen. Well, not going to. It has happened already. So from that standpoint, I think AI is going to play a big part in both the dark side and the good side. We just need to make sure that our political side of the house understands the ramifications of these things. Like the Colonial Pipeline hack that happened a couple of years ago, that all of a sudden gas prices went nuts because these refineries. Well, that's a political problem, that needs to happen. So just as you could have, I think our defenses are going to be more automated, which will speed things up. But at the same time, our offenses are going to be automated. So it's going to be an interesting, next 10, 20 years. From the educator standpoint, I think it's just like everything else. Kids are getting used to the technology, from when they're 2 or 3 years old. I have a 2.5-year-old nephew who's got a little iPad and it's got all sorts of cool things, and he can do that type of stuff. I'm sure you've seen the YouTube thing with the little baby on a print magazine, trying to swipe the pages over, and
Oh,
it's
I
not
did
working.
not, but that's classic. I love it. I've not.
Yeah. So, so I think it's going to be a lot easier for people to understand, what the computer stuff can do. The big area I think we're going to see a big push both in the positive and negative side is in what we call operational technology. not informational technology. So operational technology is power plants, cars, the physical things that are controlled by computers. The self-driving cars. Well, imagine if I mess up the code on a car that says, "Hey, don't steer to the right of the center line. Steer to the left of it." That type of stuff. I mean, we're seeing those software glitches now, and what has me concerned is, information technology side. Oh, I lost some data. Okay, my credit's shot. But on the operational technology side, people die, and if there's a malfunction like that. So I think that's where I'm more concerned about things is as more and more computers, control devices that we used to do manually, then that's going to be an issue.
Right. Randy, thank you. This was such a fun conversation.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Again, for all of you listening, we've been talking to Randy Marchany, the IT security officer for Virginia Tech. And thank you to all the listeners for joining us for Next Gen Cyber, the future of cybersecurity, a podcast of the U.S. Cyber Range.